Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahm, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Dhyanamoolam Guru Murti, Pujamoolam Guru Padam, Mantramoolam Guru Vak, Mokshamoolam Guru Kripa. Shivoham, friends. So today we will start our reading of chapter 91 onwards of Utpatti Khanda. And in this chapter, Brahma wonders whether to create, and two aspects to the mind is discussed. Now the sun is continuing, my Lord, therefore I say that the mind, like time, is indestructible by its nature, and the unavoidable curse of the sage could not alter its tenor. Therefore, it is not right for you, O great Brahma, to destroy the ideal fabric of the air-drawn world of the sons of Hindu. It is improper for the great souls to put a check on others' fancies. O Lord of Lords, what are you lacking in this universe of so many worlds that should make your great soul pine for the air-built worlds of Hindu sons? The mind is truly the maker of worlds. It is known as the prime male. Hence, the mind fixed to its purpose is not to be shaken from it by the power of any curse or by virtue of any drug or medicine or even by any kind of chastisement. The mind, that is the image of everybody, is not destructible like the body, but remains forever fixed to its purpose. Therefore, let the 10 Ainda brothers continue in their ideal act of creation. O Lord, who has made these creatures? Remain firm in your place. See the infinite space spread before you, commensurate with the ample scope of your understanding. In the triple spheres of your consciousness and mind, and the vast emptiness of space. These threefold infinities of ethereal, mental, and intellectual spaces are only reflections of the infinite emptiness of divine consciousness. They supply you, O Brahma, with ample space to create as many worlds as you wish. You are at liberty at your pleasure to create whatever you like. When you have the power to create anything, do not think that the sons of Hindu have robbed you of anything. Brahma said, after the sun had spoken to me in this manner concerning man and other worlds, I reflected a while and then answered him, saying, well said, O son, for I see the ample space of air lying open before me. I also see my spacious mind and the vast comprehension of my consciousness. Therefore, I will go on with my work of creation forever. I will immediately think about multitudes of material productions. O son, I ordain you as my first offspring to produce all these for me. Now produce all things as you will and according to my command, at which the brilliant sun readily complied to my request. Then this great light stood with his two-part body of light and heat. With the first, he shone like the sun in the middle of heaven. With the second, his body's property of heat, he became my agent in the nether worlds. He produced all things in the course of the revolutions of his seasons as I had asked him to do. Thus, I have related to you, O sagely Vasishtha, all about the nature and acts of the mind and omnipotence of the great soul that infuses its might in the mind through its act of creation and production. Whatever reflection is represented in the mind manifests in a visible form and becomes compact and stands confessed before it. Look at the extraordinary power of the mind that raised ordinary Brahman men to the rank of Brahma through their conception of it in themselves. As the individual souls of the Aindavas were incorporated with Brahma through their intense thought of him within, so also have we attained to the level of Brahma. The mind is full of innate ideas, and the figure that lays a firm hold of the mind appears expressed outside in a visible shape. There is no material substance beside one's own mind. The mind is the wonderful attribute of the soul and bears in itself many other properties like the inborn pungency of pepper. These properties appear also as the mind and are called its hyperphysical or mental faculties. It is a downright mistake on the part of some to understand them as belonging to the body. The same mind, when combined with its purer desires, is also called the living principle, Jiva. After all is said, it is bodiless and unknown in its nature. There is nobody like me or any other person in this world except this wonderful and self-existent mind, which, like the sons of Hindu, assumes the false conception of being real Brahmas themselves. As the Aindavas were Brahmans in their mind, so my mind makes me a Brahma also. It is the mind that makes one such and such, according to the conception that he entertains of himself. It is only by a conceit of my mind that I think myself situated as a Brahma in this place. Otherwise, all these material bodies are known to be as unreal, like the emptiness of the soul in which they abide. The unsullied mind approximates the divine by its constant meditation of the divine. But being spoiled by the variety of its desires, it becomes a living being, which at last turns to animal life and the living body. The intelligent body shines like any of the luminous orbs in the worlds. It is brilliant with the intelligent soul, like the appearance of a visionary creation of the mind. All things are the productions of the mind and reflections of itself, like the two moons in the sky, one being only a reflection of the other, and is the concepts of man's worlds. There is nothing such as real or unreal, nor is there any personality such as I or you or any other. Real and unreal are both alike, unless it is the conception that makes something appear as a reality, which has otherwise no reality of itself. No, the mind is both active and inert. It is vast, owing to the vastness of its desires. It is lively on account of its spiritual nature of the great God. The mind becomes inert by its incorporation with material objects. The conception of phenomena as real cannot make them real, any more than the appearance of a golden bracelet can make it a gold, or the phenomena appearing in Brahma can identify themselves with Brahma himself. Brahma being all in all, the inert also are said to be intelligent, whereas all beings from ourselves down to the blocks are neither inert nor intelligent. It is said that lifeless blocks are without intelligence and perception, but everything that bears a like relation to another has its perception, also like the other. Know that everything is sentient and has its perception or sensitivity. All things possess perception only because of the relation between themselves and the Supreme Soul. Therefore, the terms inert and sensitive in their application to things existing in the one divine spirit are meaningless. It is like attributing fruit and flowers to the tree of a barren land. The barren waste refers to the vacuum of the divine mind, and its trees to its unsubstantial ideas, which are neither inert nor sentient, like the fruit or flowers of those trees. Notion or thought formed by an act of consciousness is called the mind. Of these, the intellect or intellectual part is the active principle, but the thought or mental part is quite inert. The intellectual part consists of the operation of exercise of consciousness, but the thought or that which is thought, which are the acts of consciousness, are known to be inert. These are viewed by the individual soul in the false light of the world. The nature of consciousness is pure unity, but the mind, situated within consciousness and therefore called the established in the intellect, Chitistha, Chittast, is a dualism of itself, and this appears in the form of duality in the world. Thus, by exercise of consciousness of itself as the other form, the ideal assumes the shape of the phenomenal world. Being indivisible in itself, it wanders through the labyrinth of errors with its other parts of the mind. There is no error in the unity of consciousness, nor is the soul liable to errors unless it is deluded by its belief in pluralities. Consciousness is as full as the ocean, with all its thoughts rising and sitting in it like endless waves. That which you call the mental part of the consciousness is full of errors and ignorance. And the ignorance of the intellectual part produces the errors of egoism and personality. There is no error of egoism or personality in the transcendental category of the divine soul, because it is the integrity of all consciousness, just as the sea is the collection of all its waves and waters. The belief of egoism rises like any other thought of the mind and is as inborn in it as water in the mirage, which doesn't exist really in it. The term ego is inapplicable to the pure and simple internal soul, which, being weakened by the gross idea of its ardent desire, takes the name of ego, just as thickened coldness is called by the name of frost. The pure substance of consciousness forms the ideas of gross bodies, just as one dreams of his death in his sleep. All-pervading consciousness, which is the all-inherent and omnipotent soul, produces all forms in itself, of which there is no end until they are reduced to unity. The mind manifests various appearances in the form of things, and being of a pure ethereal form, it assumes various shapes by its intellectual or spiritual body. Let the learned abstain from thoughts of the three worlds, of the threefold forms of the pure intellectual, spiritual, and physical bodies, and reflect on them in his own mind as the reflections of divine consciousness. The mind, being cleansed of its darkness, like the mirror of its dirt, shows the golden color of spiritual light, replete with real joy, and by far more blissful than what is the earthly cloud of body can ever yield. We should cleanse the mind that exists forever rather than the body which is transient and non existent, and which is as unreal as the trees living in the air, of which no one takes any notice. Those employed purifying their bodies under the impression that the body also is called the soul are the atheistic charvaks, who are like silly gods among men. Whatever one thinks inwardly in himself, he is truly transformed to it, its likeness. As in the example of the 10 Indra Brahman sons, and like Indra and Ahilya cited before. Whatever is represented in the mirror of the mind, the same also appears in the figure of the body. But because neither this body nor anyone's ego lasts forever, it is right to forsake our desires. It is natural for everybody to think himself as an embodied being subject to death. It is like a boy who thinks he is possessed by a demon of his own imagination until he gets rid of his false belief by the aid of reason. So with this chapter 91 comes to end, and we immediately take chapter 92. And in this chapter it is said that a strong mind is unaffected by curses. And Vasishtha added, "Now hear, O support of Raghu's race, what I next asked of the lotus-born Lord Brahma after we had finished the preceding conversation. I asked him, saying, Lord, you have spoken before of the irrevocable powers of curses. Then how is it that their powers is frustrated by man? We have witnessed the efficacy of curses pronounced with potent mantra anathemas to overpower the understanding and senses of living animals and paralyze every member of the body. The mind and body are as intimately connected with each other as motion with air and fluidity with a sesame seed. There is nobody except a creation of mind, like the fantasies of vision and dreams, and like the false sight of water in the mirage, or the appearance of two moons in the sky. Or else, why is it that the dissolution of the one brings on the extinction of the other? Such as the quiet of the mind is followed by the loss of bodily sensation. Tell me, my lord, how is the mind unaffected by the power of curses and menace that subdue the senses? Are mind and senses both overpowered by curses, being the one and the same thing? Brahma replied, No, there is nothing in the treasure house of this world that man cannot attain by means of his efforts in the right way. All species of animal beings, from the state of the highest Brahma down to the minute insects, are bicorporal. They are endowed with two bodies, mental and physical. The mental body is ever active and always fickle. The other is the worthless body of flesh, which is dull and inactive. The fleshy part of the body that accompanies all animal beings is overpowered by the influence of curses and charms practiced by the art of incantation. The influence of certain supernatural powers stupefies a man, makes him dull and dumb. Sometimes one is about to droop down unconscious, as spellbound persons are deprived of their external senses, and fall down like a drop of water from a lotus leaf. The mind, which is the other part of the body of embodied beings, is ever free and not subdued, though it is always under the subjection of all living beings in the three worlds. He who can control his mind by continued patience on one hand and by constant vigilance on the other is the man of an impeccable character and unapproachable by calamity. The more a man, this word is not impeccable, this is unimpeachable. The man of an unimpeachable character and unapproachable by calamity, the one who controls his mind. The more a man employs the mental part of his body to its proper employment, the more successful he is in obtaining the object that he has in his mind. Mere physical energy is never successful in any undertaking. It is only intellectual activity that is sure of success in all attempts. Focusing the mind in an effort to hurt objects unconnected with matter is as vain as trying to pierce a stone with an arrow. Drown the body underwater or dip it in mud, burn it in fire or fling it aloft in the air, yet the mind turns not from its orientation. He who is true to his purpose is sure of success. Intensity of physical efforts overcomes all impediments, but only mental effort leads to ultimate success in every undertaking. Mark the example of the fictitious Brahmin boy Indra, who employed all his thoughts to assimilate himself into the very image of his beloved and drowned all his bodily pains in the pleasure of his thoughts of her. Think of the manly fortitude of Mandavya, whom, when he was about to be beheaded, made his mind as detached as marble and was unconscious of his suffering. Think of the sage who fell into a dark pit while his mind was employed in some sacrificial rite. He was taken up to the heaven in reward of the merit of his mental sacrifice. Remember also how the 10 sons of Hindu, by virtue of their persevering tap, obtained their status as Brahma, which even I have not the power to withhold. There have been many other such sages and masterminds among men and gods who never laid aside their mental energies, whereby they were crowned with success in their proper pursuits. No pain or sickness, no fulmination or threat, no malicious beast or evil spirit can break down the resolute mind, any more than a lean lotus leaf striking can split the breast of a hard stone. Those whom you say have been disturbed by tribulations and persecutions, I understand them as too infirm in their face and very weak both in their minds and courage. Men with heedful minds have never been entrapped in the snare of errors in this perilous world. They have never been visited by the demons of despair in their sleeping or waking states. Therefore, let a man employ himself exercising his own manly powers and engage his mind and mental energy to noble pursuits in the paths of truth and holiness. The enlightened mind forgets its former darkness and sees its objects in their true lights. The thoughts that grows big in the mind swallows it up at last, just as the imagination of a ghost lays hold of a child's mind. The new reflection effaces the prior impressions from the tablet of the mind. Just as an earthen pot turning on the potter's wheel thinks no more of its nature of dirty clay. The mind, O Muni, is transformed in a moment to its new model. Just like inflated water rises high into waves, spray and foam, glaring with reflections of sunlight. The mind, adverse to right investigation, sees like the blind. Everything in darkness, even in broad daylight, and observes by deceptions two moons for one in the moonshine. Whatever the mind has in view, it soon succeeds in accomplishing, whether it does anything of good or evil. It reaps the rewards accordingly in the gladness or bitterness of his soul, soul. A wrong reflector reflects a thing in a wrong light, just as a distracted lover sees a flame in moonbeams, which makes him burn and consume in his state of distraction. It is the conception of the mind that makes salt seem sweet to taste by its giving a flavor to the salted food for our jest and delight. It is our conception that makes us see a forest in the fog or a tower in the clouds appearing to the sight of the observer to be rising and falling by turns. In this manner, whatever shape the imagination gives to a thing, it appears in the same form before the mind's sight. Therefore, knowing this world of your imagination to be neither a reality nor unreality, stop seeing it and its various shapes and colors as they appear to you. With this chapter also comes to an end, and I think we should take rest for today here itself with this reading of chapter. And by grace of Lord Ram, we will again meet tomorrow. Until then, Shivoham friends, we will meet again tomorrow.